Okay, welcome back, guys. So let's go ahead and do the chapter 11 review here. So let's go. We're going to be going over another example of every single depreciation method that we just learned. Okay, so let's go ahead and go through the first one, which is units of production. So in this case, all right, here, you purchase a machine for $2,050. Okay, with $500 salvage value. Right, its useful life is 7 years, and can produce up to 25,000 units. Okay, and of course you put this machine into service on June 12th. Use the units of production method. So here you go. We know what our method is. Let's see. What did we buy? We bought a machine. How much did the machine cost me?
$20.50.
$20.50. Good. Well, how much is my salvage value?
$500.
$500. What's my estimated useful life?
7 years.
7 years. How many units can it produce in grand total?
25,000.
25,000 units. Good. And last but not least, when's the date that we placed into service?
June 12th, so June.
June 12th. So yes, perfect. Good. So June 12th. So that means, when do we actually start to do it? Start depreciating? You said June. Perfect. Okay. In this case, is units of production time sensitive? No, because at the end of the year, as long as you're calculating how many miles that you've driven, this one is not super time sensitive. Okay, as long as you are are recording what miles that you drove or how many units that you produced. So in this case, our machine produced on our first year only 1,750, compared to one whole entire year where you can do up to 4,000 units. That makes sense, right? Because you place the asset into service during the middle of the year. So it makes sense in this case, as long as you're having the numbers of units produced that year is going to pretty much determine the length of time that you've had the asset for. Okay. So then let's go ahead and take a look at our depreciation basis. What is going to be a depreciation basis?
Does it start with the 2050 or no?
2050. Does it start with 2050? It doesn't. That's not all it starts with. What else does it have to have? You have to subtract the salvage value, remember? So in this case, you're going to have your cost of the asset minus salvage value of $500. Okay? So that should leave you with $1,550. Okay? How do I solve for my per unit rate? Anybody? What's my per unit rate? We're using units of production, so what's my per unit rate going to be?
It looks like it's depreciation basis over estimated units of production.
Okay, so what numbers is that going to be? So it's going to be
The 2050. No, not. Is it the 1050?
where are you getting 1050 from?
I don't know. I'm sorry, the 1550
1550, good.
over the 1750.
1750. Where are you getting 1750 from?
Isn't it units of produced?
You total,
Estimated units
it's
produced?
at total estimated units produced.
Oh, so it's the 25,000.
Correct. So in this case, what's my grand total here? What is my per unit cost? So in this case, what I'm doing here is, if this is my grand total cost, right, or that's the amount that I can depreciate, right, I can depreciate that, right, and I have a total grand total. My capacity is 25,000. That means I'm going to break down. That means every unit that I produce is going to give me a rate. It's going to give me maybe 25 cents, maybe $1.50 or something like that, right? So then when I do figure out my depreciation expense, if I produced 1750, what's my per unit rate going to be? That's the number that I'm solving right here. How much is it going to cost me to produce one unit?
The 0.062.
0.062. I'm going to expand this because, yes, it is 0.062. Okay. So now that I kind of gave you the next step, so how do I solve for my depreciation expense?
It's number of units produced times per unit rate.
Correct. So produced that year. So if I produced 1,750 units that year, and my per unit rate is going to be 6.2 cents each one.
Or at 108.50.
108.50. Good. So then that's going to bring my accumulated depreciation to be the same because it's the first year. So then what's my total book value going to be?
It's your cost of asset minus accumulated depreciation.
Correct. So what's my cost of asset?
2050.
2050. Yes. We're not going to do the depreciation basis. It's going to be the total asset cost minus accumulated depreciation, which gives me
1941.50.
1941.50. Good. Okay. So let's go ahead and solve for year 2. All right, what's my depreciation basis going to be?
The same, right? 1550 for all the years.
Correct, right? Because in this case, my formula is still going to always be consistently being cost of the asset minus salvage value. So in this case, if cost of this asset minus salvage value is going to be more or less the same, then it's going to be the same throughout the whole thing, right? Because you're going to be constantly doing 2050 minus 500, 2050 minus 500. It's going to give you the same answer. What about my per unit rate?
The same.
That's also going to be the same too because the formula is still the same. It's going to be your depreciation basis divided by the total number of units it can produce. So in this case, you're going to also copy and paste down there. That's going to be 6.2 cents. Okay. Now the only difference here is we have a fluctuation between the number of units that I produced that year. So in this case, for year 2, how much is my depreciation expense if I produce 3,500 units?
217.
217. Good. So then my accumulated depreciation for year 2 is going to be
325.50.
325.50, which brings my book value down to 2. Okay, so which numbers am I going to be using this time?
It's 2050 minus accumulated.
Correct, right? That one is always the same. So you don't ever take the book value. You're always going to be taking the asset cost or cost of the asset minus accumulated
1724.50.
1724.50. All right, good. So since we solved the first 2 rows already, or first two columns here, let's go ahead and continue filling out the depreciation expense. So what's my depreciation expense for year 3? If I produce a total of 3,800 units.
235.60.
235.60. Good. All right, which make my accumulated depreciation to be
561. 561.10.
good. Okay. So then, what is going to be my book value as of year 3?
1488.90.
Good. All right.
I'll let somebody else go.
Okay. So then, what is going to be my depreciation expense if I produce 4,000 units for year 4?
If nobody's answering, it's 248.
Is everybody awake? $248. Good. So then my accumulated depreciation is going to be
Okay, it's 809.10.
good 809.10, which gives you your book value to be 1240.90. Okay. So for year 5, what's going to be my depreciation expense if I produce 4,300 units this time?
266.6.
266.6, which brings my accumulated depreciation to be
1075.7.
set good. So then that should bring your book value to be 974.50. Good. So let's go. We have 2 more left. So let's go ahead and just push through. So in this case, what is going to be my depreciation expense if this time I only produce 4,100 units?
$254.20.
Okay.
$1329.40.
1329 in this case is 90 because 70 plus 20 is going to be 90.
$720.10.
72010. All right. So let's go ahead and do the last one. So in this case, what is going to be my depreciation expense for for year 7 if I produce 3,600 units?
$223.20.
22320.
1553.10.
Good. So then that brings my book value
$496.90.
496.90. Now, can I have this value?
No, we're off by a couple dollars for the 500.
Correct, right? In this case, no. My book value fell below salvage value. So in this case, nope, I cannot continue with this salvage with this book value, right? It must be equal to 500. So, how can I solve for it so that it's actually correct?
Do you work backwards?
You can work backwards. That is a way that you can. You can also, there's one more other way that you can also do this. Let's take a look at my capacity. Okay. How many units can I produce?
25,000.
You can produce 25,000. So in this case, I'm going to do an equal sum real quick. Did I produce 25,000 units? In this case, I produced 2,550. So that means this 3,600 is not supposed to be 3,600. Okay? It's actually, you actually end up producing 50 extra units. Okay? So in this case, right, I would actually have to do it. I could work forward by saying, well, I need to get to 3,550, right? 50 items less. And then I can work forward, right? And be able to solve it this way because I know the depreciation basis and rate will stay the same. However, if I run through with my formula to calculate that 3,550 times the per unit rate is actually going to cost me exactly 220.10, which brings my accumulated depreciation to match my depreciation basis, which then will result for me $500. So again, if you don't want to do the troubles to have to work backwards, then figure out what your capacity is. Because then if you work forward with your capacity, right, you will get your exact answer. Now in this case, my asset is not even 7 years old. It's only 6.5 at this point. So in this case, this is also one of those examples where you might have pushed your asset to produce too many in the span of its life, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You can choose to either scrap it or adjust it, which we'll talk about later on after this lecture here or this review here. We'll talk about what you can do when you want to dispose an asset, okay? So in this case, that is it, okay? I'm not going to require you to do journals because it's the same exact journal entry. Depreciation expense and accumulated depreciation. The only difference is the numbers that you're using, okay? So that's the first one. So let's go ahead and jump into the second problem. Double declining.
Teacher,
Yes.
the question one, please, can you show the question one?
Yes.
The question, not table. My question about what is this, the rate?
What rate are you looking at there in the question?
For its useful life is 7 years for the rate. This 62.062, the rate.
Okay.
The result of what?
That's what's going to cost me per unit. So if I can produce up to 25,000 units, right? What I'm doing is I'm taking the total cost that I am allowed to depreciate, which in this case is my depreciation basis. That's how much I can depreciate, right? Because my asset cost is 2050, but I have to have a remaining ending balance at the end of its life to hold a value of 500. Okay, so the amount that I can depreciate is 1550. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm spreading the cost amongst the number of units that I can produce. So my capacity is 25,000. That's how you get 6.2 cents per item. Okay, so that's the per unit item. It's not like the other ones where it's time sensitive. It's not about the time, it's about the number of units that you can produce. Hence the word units of production.
You mean the amount 2050 divide 25,000 or what?
No. The depreciation basis divided by, because that's how much you can depreciate. You can only depreciate up to 1550. Because you have to have a remaining salvage value at the end of the year or at the end of its life. So in this case, my depreciation basis is what I'm spreading the costs amongst.
Till now confused. I don't know how the result rate. What math transaction?
If you pull up the formula sheet, okay? So in this case, right, my depreciation basis is going to be my asset cost minus salvage value, okay? Why am I doing what's that reason why I'm calculating that? It's because in this case, right, I cannot depreciate the entire amount of my asset because at the end of its life it must have a remaining a balance or a remaining value of $500. So in this case, I must calculate how much I can depreciate up to. In this case, I take my asset cost minus salvage value. So then at the end of its estimated useful life, right, at the end of the 7 years, at least I know that I will end up with $500. Okay? So that way I'm eliminating that $500 automatically so I don't accidentally depreciate that. So that means what is my actual total amount that I can depreciate? Well, what is 2050 minus 500?
Teacher,
Yes.
what the calculation uh, was the rate?
Sorry, you are
What is
cutting in and out. I'm sorry. What, can you repeat that again?
the rate, the result of rate 0.6
It is
rate.
it is your depreciation basis divided by 25,000.
The depreciation page is the difference between 1050 minus the salvage value.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, do you understand now? I explained that. I think I explained that 5 times already. So, in order to get the 1550 is the depreciation basis, which is the total amount that I can depreciate up to. I can't depreciate those $500 because that is my salvage value. So the formula for this particular one is to solve for my per unit rate is going to be my depreciation basis divided by my total number of units that I can produce, aka my capacity. So in this case, I'm going to take my depreciation basis of 1550 and divide it by my 25,000. And that should give you 6.2 cents. Okay.
It gave me the result. It is gave me 0.75 something.
How did you get 0.75 something? Can you tell me how you got that answer?
Okay, let me try. Okay, thank you. 25,000, not 2,000. 1,550 divide 25,000.
Yes, because that's going to give you how much it's going to cost you for every unit that you produce.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh. So once you get this, right, then I produced 1750 that year. So that's where the depreciation expense is going to come from, saying because if it's going to cost me 6.2 cents for every unit I produce, then every time I produce a number amount of units, that's what's going to equal my depreciation expense.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So is that clear for everybody? I think I heard someone saying this is it's getting confusing.
No, I got it.
Okay. All right. Double declining now. Okay. So this time I purchased you purchased a laptop for $890 even, okay? Which includes all the fees and stuff. In this case, and it has a salvage value of $50. Okay, its useful life is 7 years. Okay, and of course, you put this laptop into service as of January 8th. Okay, so use double declining method. So let's go ahead and list out what I bought. I bought a laptop. Okay, how much did the laptop cost me?
$890.
$890. Good. Do I have a salvage value? $50. Okay. And then what's my estimated useful life?
7
Seven,
years.
7 years. And when did I place it into service?
January 8th.
January 8th. So that tells me when do I actually start depreciating?
January.
Good. So if I start depreciating in January and my assumption is that I do my adjustments at the end of the year, okay? So let's go ahead and figure out what my depreciation basis is going to be. So what's my depreciation basis going to be?
Beginning of year book value.
Beginning of the year book value. So in this case,
840.
no, not 840. Because this one's the beginning of the year book value, not asset minus salvage. This one's a different one. Every single method has a different way of calculating. So in this case, this is the beginning of the year's book value. How much did I buy the asset for? 890. So in this case, my beginning of the year book value is 890. Okay? So so what's my rate going to be?
It's going to be 1 divided by 7 times 2.
Good, right? It's going to be 1. I'm just going to type it in 7 times 2. All right, which gives you
0.285714. Blah.
good. No, that's correct. So in this case, because we're double declining it, we have to figure out what's the spread of the cost of it over its lifetime times 2, because I'm going to depreciate it twice as much. So in this case, right, it's gonna be 28%, 28.5%. Okay, so in this case, how do I solve for my depreciation expense?
You take the rate times the depreciation basis.
Good. Which in this case, what is my total here?
254.29.
254.29. Now let's ask the question, can I depreciate for this entire amount?
Yeah.
Yes, because when did we start depreciating it?
January.
So therefore, 1 whole year here is the correct amount, because this is for 1 whole entire year. Okay, good. So then that's going to be the same amount there. So then what's going to be my book value?
Quick question.
Yes.
On the other method that we were doing,
Mhm.
does it matter on that one whether it was the beginning of the year or not? I don't remember hearing that question.
So yes, exactly. So every single depreciation method has a different depreciation basis. In this case, the previous one, right, is based on the asset cost minus salvage value. In this one, we don't care about that. We care about what is the beginning of the year's book value, because that way, every time I depreciate it, I'm basically cutting the value in half every single time, or in this case, 28%, because it's over the span of 7 years. So in this case, this particular depreciation does not use the same formula. And that's the purpose of teaching you different methods, because they're all not going to be the same. There needs to be a difference between them. You can't treat all depreciations the same, because then what's the point of teaching you 3 different methods if they're all going to be the same exact calculations? So in this case, this one's focused more for the beginning of the year's book value. Okay.
Okay, I'm just trying to go back to our screens, and I don't see that anywhere. So I just wanted to make a mental note, I guess.
Yeah, of
So
course.
for the one before, it doesn't matter if I start in August, September, but for the double declining, if I would have started in August or September, then that's when I take a partial.
Correct. Yes, that okay. So that's the question you were asking. Okay, yes. In this case, no. The first one was not time sensitive because it never mattered. Because at the end of the day, you record as the year goes. So in this case, you're looking at a capacity and how many units you produce that year. Where in this case, this one is time sensitive because it is using its estimated useful life for you to be able to find a rate. Now, in this case, when you do it that way, then yes, it is definitely 100% time sensitive. So if this was the occasion where it was August, then yes, you would have to remember my asset's not 1 year old. It's actually X amount of months old. But in this case, since I started in January and I've confirmed that I'm going to be depreciating as of January, if assuming that I'm going to be depreciating at the end of the year, December 31st, then I have depreciated for one whole entire year. Yes, this one's time sensitive.
Thank you.
So then, how do I solve for my book value here?
The accumulated depreciation or asset cost minus accumulated depreciation.
Yes, so in this case, you need to remember it's going to be the asset cost of 890 minus my accumulated depreciation, which gives me
635.71.
635.71. So in this case, I use equal round, so that means my numbers are already rounded. Okay. So in this case, what's going to be my book value or my depreciation basis for year 2?
635.71.
Yes, this is the one where you have to carry the beginning of the year's book value because in this case, right, if the end of the year 1 book value is going to be 635.71, that makes it the beginning of the year book value for year 2. So in this case, this is the one I have to carry the values over. Now, what's my rate going to be?
It stays the same.
The rate stays the same consistently all through the 7 years, okay? It's still going to be 1 divided by the estimated useful life times 2. So in this case, 1 divided by 7 times 2. So this is going to be consistent through there, okay? Now, let's go ahead and calculate what my depreciation expense is going to be for year 2. If I have a depreciation basis of 635.71.
181.63.
181.63. Good.
Yeah.
So then what's my accumulated depreciation going to be?
$435.92.
Oh, sorry. Yep. 435.92. So then what is my book value going to be now?
454.08.
454.08. So then what is my depreciation basis for year 3?
454.08.
Correct. We carry it over to the next year. So then how do I solve what's my depreciation expense going to be for year 3?
129.74.
129.74, which brings my accumulated depreciation to be
565.66.
good. Which brings my book value down to
324.34.
324.34, which becomes my
Depreciation basis for the following year.
correct. Okay. So then depreciation expense for year 4
92, yeah, 92.67.
Good, right? And then, which brings my accumulated depreciation. So if I add that to my 565.66, it will give me a total of
658.33.
650.33, which then, if I subtract that out from my book, from my asset cost of 890,
231.67.
231.67. Good. Which then becomes my depreciation basis for year 5. Okay, so this is the one you carry over. So then, in this case, if I have a depreciation basis of 231.67, what is going to be my depreciation expense for year 5?
66.19.
Good. Bringing my total accumulated depreciation to be
724.52.
perfect. Okay, and if I subtract 890 from that, I should get 165.48. So 2 more years left, and let's see where we end up. Okay, so plug that in there. So, oh, I guess my Excel's picking up what I'm doing here. So I got 47.28 for my depreciation expense, which will give me a total accumulated depreciation of
771.80.
771.80, which brings my book value to 1820. Good. Which becomes my basis. Uh-huh.
And 33.77.
Yes, I know Excel's already picking up. So again,
Yeah.
we'll bring 805, not 57. So it will then now I'm at $84.43. So this is where you have a choice, because in this case, I've exhausted my machine. It's already reached its end of its useful life. However, it hasn't reached its salvage value. So you do have a choice. You can push it an extra year. That time is not is I guess what do you call it? It's not the essence. So you can force a machine to continue, right? Because a life is not going to determine anything. However, you can have a potential to have problems or issues if you push the asset beyond its life. So you do have an option to either scrap it off and just write it off that $84, or you can continue for an 8th year. Okay, so let's say if I do the example, and let's say I do continue for 1 more year. Like, why not? It's a laptop. It's not gonna hurt if I push it for 1 more year. So if I go ahead and go for 1 more year, okay, let's see what happens here. Okay, I'm going to solve here what my depreciation basis times my rate,
24.12.
2412, which brings you 829.69. So then you are down to $60.31. Okay, now at this point, a laptop, if it's pretty much should be dead by now, especially with technology. If even if you push it for another year, again, it's up to you. You can't, the best thing that you can do, because now that it's way beyond its life, right? And think about it, in reality, would you even want that laptop to be even around at this point? Again, so
Yeah.
you might have to scrap it for a loss in this case. You can, what do you call it, recycle it and get some money out of it. Like if you submit your old electronics to like a store, they might scrap it for metal. So you might get paid something out of it. But we'll talk about that in the next couple sections after we come back from the break. Okay. What you can do if you choose to just scrap it. So in this case, I'm not going to push my laptop even further. It's probably because it's got like a busted battery and stuff like that, right? It's already been beyond its this life already, so there's really no point to keep it going. Okay. So, all right, let's go ahead and now solve for my next depreciation here. I have purchased this time a table set for $770 with $70 salvage value. Okay, its useful life is 7 years, and you put this table into service or into use as of August 21st. Use the straight line method. Okay, so in this case, I bought a table set. Okay, and let's see, how much did my table set cost me? 770. Good. Do I have a salvage value?
70.
70. Good. All right. How many years?
7. This is all lucky 7.
It's all 7. Good, except for the date. This time, my date that I placed into service was August 21st. So what does that tell me? When do I actually depreciate it?
September.
You depreciate it as of September. Now, in this case, assuming that I depreciate at the end of the year, December 31st, let's go ahead and fill out the table here. Okay. This time, my depreciation basis is going to be different. All right. How do I solve for my depreciation basis for straight line?
Cost minus salvage.
Correct, right? My cost of 770 minus my salvage value of 70 gives me 700. Okay, so that is going to be my depreciation basis. What is going to be my rate?
1 over your estimated useful.
Good. 1 over my estimated useful, which is 7 years. So that should give you how much?
0.142857.
Good. Correct. Okay. Good. You can display as many numbers as you like as long as you do not round this number off. Okay. So then let's go ahead and solve for my depreciation expense for year 1. Okay. So it's going to be basis times rate. So what is going to be my total depreciation expense?
Well, don't we have to cut this one in half? Well, not in half, but like, because we're starting in September.
Correct. Good. Okay. So in this case,
So it'd be $33.33.
okay, good. So in this case, right? In this case, yes, it's time sensitive because we're looking at the asset based on its age, right? So in this case, I am looking at September, October, November, December. I'm looking at 4 months, okay? Times 4 out of 12, okay? I'm looking at 4 months out of 12. So that's going to give me 33. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So then my accumulated depreciation for year 1 is going to be the same exact as my depreciation expense because I have no previous years accumulated. So therefore, what is going to be my total book value?
67.
I'm having problems with my.
How did you get that number?
73667.
Yes, you need to take the asset cost, which is 770, minus the $33 to get 736.67. So in this case, remember, never use a depreciation basis. It's always going to be asset cost. Okay? So then, what's my depreciation basis for year 2?
The same.
It's going to be the same, right? Because in this case, it's always going to be asset cost minus salvage value. In this case, it's always going to be 770 minus 70. What about my rate?
Also
The rate.
same.
The rate also stay the same. So in this case, remember, it's 1 divided by the estimated useful life. You're only going to depreciate it once, where compared to the other one, you had to add the times 2. This one, I'm only depreciating it once. So there you go. So then what is going to be my depreciation expense for the year 2?
$100.
It's going to be $100. Oops. No, it's supposed to be D12, comma 2 for $100. So then what is going to be my accumulated depreciation?
$133.33.
Correct. Which then brings my book value to be $636.67. Okay, so let's go ahead and compute the next one. What's my depreciation expense going to be for year 3?
It stays the same the rest of the years.
Yes.
$100.
All right. For the next 7, they're all going to be $100. So in this case, right, you're basically going to be increasing your accumulated depreciation by $100. So it's going to be $233, $333, $433, $533, and $633. Right? Straightforward. Same thing with your book value. It's going to decline $100 every single year. So in this case, it's going to be down to 36, 436. Where's my 436, 336, and then 236, and then now 136. So in this case, right, I reached my 7th year. Can I keep going, or do I need to stop?
I
You
I
need to go.
I have to keep going, yes.
Yes, because in this case, how old is my asset?
6 plus 4 months.
It's only 6 months and 6 years and 4 months old. So in this case, yes, I have to continue on. We're on the 8th year, because in this case, when I'm looking at my accounting year, it's not going to be the same as the actual age of my my asset. So in this case, if we know this, that the first 2 columns are going to be the same. Now, however, is my depreciation expense going to be the same?
No. This 666.
Yes. In this case, no, it's not. Because how many months do I have left on this asset?
8.
I have exactly 8. So in this case, I have to figure out this calculation here, where I can only depreciate it up to 8 months. So this is the example I was talking about. So in this case, that means I can only depreciate 8 months out of 12, which is going to give me $66.67, which brings this a grand total of $700, which gives you your remaining book.
700, yes.
book value of 70. Okay, so this is an easier example. So again, this is straight line for you. You would usually solve for one if it's not time sensitive, right? Or if you place into service as of January, it's pretty straightforward, right? You would finish this in like 5 seconds, right? They're all going to be the same. Okay. All right, last but not least, we have amortization. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at amortization here. So in this case, right, I decided to buy a license for $556. Right? And of course, the useful estimated life is about 15 years. So in this case, and I place it into service as of October 10. So, or I purchased it on October 10. So I bought a license. Okay. What is my assets cost? $556. What is my useful life?
15 years.
15 years. And of course, when is the date that I placed in service? In this case, I purchased it as of October 10. So what does that tell me?
October.
I have to depreciate it starting as of October. Okay, so in this case, what's my depreciation basis going to be?
Your asset cost.
It's going to be your asset cost, right? In this case, right, it's going to be exactly identical to straight line. But straight line has a salvage value, right? Intangibles does not have any salvage value. So in this case, it's going to be the asset cost. Okay. What's my rate going to be?
0.0667.
Okay, good, right? It's going to be 1 over 15, which gives you 0.0667. Okay. So then, what is going to be my depreciation expense for the first year?
$3 months.
Yes, in this case, we also have to recognize that we can only depreciate it for 3 months, right? October, November, and December, assuming that we depreciate the end of the year. So in this case, we can only recognize 3 months. So in this case, what's my depreciation expense?
$9.27.
$9.27. Okay, which brings my book value to be
$546.73.
So I'm going to take my 556 minus my $9 to get the 546.78. Good. So then what's my depreciation basis going to be for our year 2?
The same.
Right, so this is going to be the same thing as my asset cost. What about my rate?
Same.
It's also going to be the same, okay? So then this time, what is going to be my depreciation expense for year 2? $37.07. Right? And of course, we know that if it's $37.07 for every single year, it's going to be $37.07 for every single year. Okay? I'm not going to make you do all 15 years because it's going to be rinse and repeat. So just for the first 5 years, okay? Right? You're going to get 46.34, which brings my book value to 509.66. Okay? So then, what is going to be my depreciation expense for year 3?
46, 34.
36, 34 plus my,
341.
yes. Okay. Which then makes my book value down to 472.59. Same thing here. Now, what's my accumulated depreciation for year 4? I'm going to add my 83.41 plus my 3707. 124.88, and I'm just gonna go ahead and solve this one for you. It's just you're just gonna keep adding 3707. So in this case, book value for year 4 becomes 435.52 minus another 3707.
398.45.
398.45. Okay. So that's the end of the chapter 11 review exercises. Any questions? Okay. So, quick note before that. I've already provided the worksheets that has all the formulas. And like I've mentioned before, if you take a look at the formula, it's all about just plugging in the numbers in the formula. Now the question here, or the trick question here, is which formulas are you plugging these numbers in, is how you're going to be able to answer the question. So make sure you are careful on knowing which the 5 components there are in order for you to solve for this depreciation. Okay. So any questions in regards to any of the 3 depreciations that we looked at today?
So the very first one is the one that you don't have to calculate for the 12 months. You just start off.
Correct. Because in this case, it's not time sensitive. It's based on the capacity. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the other 2 is time sensitive, right? You have double declining, right? It's based, because you even look at the rate. The rate is based on its life. Where the first one, it's not based on its life. It's just based on the capacity of units that you can produce. So that's a huge difference there. Now, like I've mentioned before, right? The formula for this one and the double declining are completely 2 different types of formulas. However, straight line is a hybrid between the 2, right? You got components from units of production and components of double declining, right? But yes, right? All right. Any other questions?
No.